Try and be smart with me, you little creep.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, we grab a copy off that shelf, we put it into the VCR, and we see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that guy's Mike.
Jolly good.
And together we're here to help you navigate all those landmines littered down memory lane. So Mike, first things first, I didn't want to wait to the end in case people bail out on the show, but I want to take a brief minute to recognize our show super fan and part-time contributor, Dr. K. Mike, I'm going to show something to the camera to you at least. I was taking my dog to the vet.
Oh, wow.
And he must have heard me lamenting from our previous episode about Planet of the Apes, the toys I missed. And he walks out after he's serviced my animal, my little chunk. He brings out a 1967 Mego Planet of the Apes playset, cart, and catapult full of rocks. Complete set, Mike.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And he hands it over to me and says, "Here, this is yours." I'm like, wow, what a guy.
That's pretty good.
Kay, you turned me into an 8-year-old boy again. I appreciate it. So fantastic. Thank you so much. Does your vet give you toys, Mike?
No, not even a loincloth wearing Charlton Heston. I didn't get any of that.
Damn right he does. But Dr. K, thank you very much. Appreciate that, man. So speaking of super fans, Mike, I don't know if you would look at the analytics or the metrics for the show, but in the last couple of weeks, we've got a huge boost in downloads. We've got 10x downloads than we had the previous month. And I noticed there's 4 different occasions where it looks to me as if one person has been downloading our entire catalog. 3 different people have done that in the last couple of days. So if you're listening to this podcast now, we've turned you on as a new listener, and you did that, send us an email. We'd like to get to know you, but more importantly, we want to give you the help that you need.
Yeah.
There's people that can help you.
You might not know this about us, but we worry about mental health, and our listeners need to be checked on once in a while just to make sure that I don't know, just make sure you're okay. What motivates you to do this?
Yeah, we can be an unpleasant influence. We've acknowledged that several times.
Yes.
But all that said, guys, thank you for listening, and glad to have you into the Grumpy Nostalgia family. Hope you continue to listen and tell your dumb friends, because there's a lot of us out there, and we need a affirmation.
That's right.
So appreciate that. So Mike, Hollywood's at it again, as you might have noticed. The reimagining remake machine has been gassed up again.
Oh yeah.
The most recent victim of that is going to be the focus of today's podcast, and that's going to be Time Bandits. Mike?
Yes, the original source material.
Yeah, so this is a Apple TV series this time because no one has the courage to put a movie out anymore, I'm thinking. And I saw the trailer this morning. I watched it a couple times just to confirm it was actually a thing. And I don't know, Mike.
Yeah,
I see a bad moon horizon.
I see a ratio up ahead.
It's odd because when you think like swashbuckling, time traveling, space pirate, do you think Lisa Kudrow first? I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think. Do you think we'll get the Confederate wearing traveler on this one, the Confederate cap wearing one, or is that's probably like?
Oh no, there's
no bueno probably now. I guess
there's a list of things they probably clicked. I think don't touch this, can't touch this, don't go here, don't go there.
The legacy of Peter Dinklage lives on.
Yeah, so it's everybody on YouTube and the internet. It's lazy just to automatically hate it. So I'm going to give it a chance before I pass judgment. But here we go. Yikes. So let's talk about the source material, Mike, at least. So you ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. So this was directed by Terry Gilliam, one of our favorites. Well, we covered a couple of his movies on the podcast. Brazil, Fisher King, 12 Monkeys, again, which we covered. Kind of unique filmmaker. Everybody in Hollywood wants to work with them. Um, got his own unique set of vision, at least, Mike, for his films.
That's the truth. Yeah, you can see that, he was known for doing all the artwork for the Monty Python group,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you see it, it's almost like reflected in his movies. It's almost like a kind of like a Tim Burton-y kind of comic book come alive kind of thing
yeah,
when you see some of his movies.
yep. Very, very unique style. You're not
Yeah.
confused about is this a Terry Gilliam movie or not? You pretty much
You
know.
know it. Yeah.
He was the only American member of the Monty Python troupe, so famous in this late 60s, early 70s. He renounced his citizenship in 2006 to the US. That means he's only allowed in the US 29 days a year. After that, he gets kicked out. So,
So he probably gets to stay less than Roman Polanski.
yeah, for much different reasons. Good point. Let's move on. This was written by Michael Palin, a fellow Python cast member, and Terry Gilliam also served as the film's writer. He's actually attached to the new project as well, but I think
He's disavowed.
He's disavowed it, right?
Yeah, that's what kind of like makes me leery of it because he saw the
Yeah,
like one of the original cuts of it, and I think he had some choice words and then he walked out. What I
so
hear.
doesn't bear well for the success of that new series, but let's see. This had a budget of $5 million, and it was released on November 6th, 1981. So one of the unique things about this movie, among a couple hundred of them, is the big cast, Mike, I want to say.
Yeah, it's
See what I did there? Big. Yeah. So you want to walk us through the principal players, Mike?
Sure. It was I think the big coup here was getting Sean Connery, one of the headline guys in there, but he plays a couple different characters in here. It didn't this is before his wig days, so he was still kind of a dashing,
Yeah.
good guy to like you say, I guess everybody wanted to work with Terry Gilliam because you look at up and down the cast, it's a lot of who's who of English,
Yeah.
cast members that are just, like, wow,
Right.
this guy, Ralph Richardson, and you see some of these things. Even Jim Broadbent, who wasn't known at the time, he appears as one of those trademark kind of Monty Python kind of game show characters. It's just a real
Yeah.
good role. But you have, of course, Michael Palin, who co-wrote it, is in here a couple of times. I can't, along with Shelley Duvall, it's kind of like this. There's a couple that appears in two different times, and
Yeah.
they're talking about very adult things, but having they
Yeah.
get their comeuppance. It's kind of funny. John Cleese appears briefly and as Robin Hood in this movie.
Yep.
It must have been the easiest shoot for him of all time. I mean, it's like he was maybe on set for half a day and filmed this part.
Yep.
But a very, very important role. Is really hilarious as this. Again, it's like a Monty Python kind of character ripped straight from one of their sketches.
Yeah.
Playing as Robin Hood.
My favorite part of the movie, that scene.
Oh yeah, the Jolly Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ian Holm plays Napoleon. Who's very short in this movie, believe it or not. He was from Fifth Element. Wasn't who did Fifth Element? That was a Luc Besson.
Luc
Right.
Besson. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ian Holm was in that one.
That's right.
And then we have our David Warner, who's prepping his Tron villain. Let's face it, when does David Warner not play a villain? Maybe, in a Star Wars movie, I think, or Star Trek movie. And oh shoot, what was the other one? He was in
Man with Two Brains.
Yeah, he wasn't a bad guy in there. He was a fellow, mad scientist, but wasn't funny. Too bad.
Yeah.
And Catherine Hellman briefly appears as the ogre's wife. She was in Soap and Who's the Boss? And how can you forget on Who's the Boss? And then you have our six dwarfs, the little people. I'm gonna try to remember their names. I know there was Og, Wally, Strutter, Randall, Fodig.
Fittig. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. And Vermin. I can't forget Vermin.
Vermin.
The guy just eats things. The scene where he eats the rat is just the best.
Wonderful.
But they're the most memorable casting in the movie is these guys. And you look at their, I know their resumes included like I know one of the guys was R2D2, and there were a couple of maybe Ewok characters or Empire Strikes Back guys, and
yeah,
Flash Gordon. There were a couple of alums from that movie in here.
That's correct. Yeah.
It's just amazing.
I caught myself this weekend researching, and I was looking at the doors that were in the cast. I'm like, okay, well, there's 4 Ewoks. There, 6 of them were Flash Gordon. There was an Oompa Loompa in here, and as I was doing that, I was thinking, men of my age are like writing their memoirs, maybe reworking or sanding that boat they're building.
You're looking.
What am I doing with my time? I'm looking up what little people were Oompa Loompas. Maybe my wife's right. Maybe I'm a loser.
It's such a loser baby, but it's such a like incestuous kind of like group because it's so small. I mean, these guys had to be used, and when they are used, it's just such a small pool of really good actors.
Right.
They would be shoe-ins to be in all these other movies that required, like you say, Oompa Loompas or those weird mutant dwarfs from from Flash Gordon that were so bizarre.
It's fitting to the little droid costume.
Oh yeah, and so they make the movie though. Even
they're every one of them were Steen Sealers.
Yeah, I think Fidget was Kenny Baker.
Kenny Baker, R2D2. Yeah.
Probably the most famous of them, and then I guess the main guy. I know he's no longer with us, but
he committed suicide. Sadly,
I remember that being a story back then, and it was kind of tragic. But and am I forgetting anybody? There's a cast of like all these mainly like famous British actors or in a lot of television and movies and Shakespeare kind of stuff. But I think we got it covered.
I think he covered it for the most part. So good job, Mike. So just a couple news of note about that cast and the movie, subsequent making the movie. No studios wanted to touch it, given the cast and the concept, and not people weren't beating down the door to produce this. So producer George Harrison, that one from the Beatles, and his friend Dennis O'Brien mortgaged their office building to get $5 million to put this to the screen. So you ever watched the trailer for this, Mike? The trailer has no insight on the plot whatsoever. It's just a bunch of random clips strewn together. And I don't know, Mike, if you're ever up for it, I'd really like to do a whole podcast about horrible trailers.
Oh, is this a bad one?
Well, no, it's not. No, in fact, it's probably better in that it doesn't tell you anything.
It shows you just enough.
The theme of the movie and what it might be about, but it doesn't give away. Like I watched the most recent Alien Romulus, whatever.
Oh yeah.
I watched the trailer, and I can already tell you everything that's going to happen, every plot turn, every plot device, every twist. Same thing with Wolverine and Deadpool. They actually introduce, I don't know, I think trailers have gotten out of control.
It's funny with that last Planet of the Apes movie we watched a month or so ago. We saw a couple trailers where it was like, I don't need to see that movie. I just saw the whole plot on the trailer, and
they're creeping into 3-minute territory right now.
Yeah.
And as we kind of discovered, in anything made past 2001 for the most part, there's only about 3 minutes worth of plot in a modern movie. And they're sending it, they're giving it all away. I mean, I think it started with Castaway. Remember the Tom Hanks movie? That trailer got a certain amount of bad press about it. It showed you that he gets off the island. It showed you how he gets there, what he does to survive, how he gets off the island. I mean, what's the point? It's
especially for thinly plotted movie like that.
Yeah, it's
I just made the list, pal.
There we go. We got one. Sean Connery, as you mentioned earlier, Mike, really wanted the opportunity to work with Terry Gilliam, and he knew the budget was getting pretty tight, and he volunteered to take less pay just to stay with the production. And so, stand-up guy.
Yeah, I was going to say he was not the best part of the movie, obviously, but just seeing him kind of show up in the middle of the movie, like, all right, and
nice job there.
He had a good role too. I would have taken less money to play that role.
Yeah, it's cool.
Better than was it Never Say Never Again that came out right after this? Ugh.
Who's killed a minotaur and done magic tricks for a little boy?
I know, right?
Yes. There you go. So, as we mentioned, there's several Star Wars actors made their premiere in this film. This came out a few years after Star Wars, 81. Other films that came out in 81 in November when this came out was Absence of Malice. Paul Newman, Sally Field, plot crime to drama. Great movie. The movie Ragtime, not as good. We've talked about that a little bit before. It's an epic. It's fun to watch. And of course, Mike, the Looney Bugs Bunny movie came out in November 81. Primarily on HBO, but there was a small theatrical release there. The top movies for that year were Superman 2.
Great one.
Featured by yours truly, and show number 6, Mike, and our most recent special re-release. Number 2 movie was Stripes. Number 3 movie was Cannonball Run. I saw the original trailer for Cannonball Run with the Ray Stevens theme song.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to watch that, Mike. I think I have to save it for the show, but
well, I think we need to do like a 2-pack with Smokey and the Bandit. And
there you go.
Do the Cannonball Run after that.
Oh, it's a 70s trash. We can do Convoy. We could do like a 70s trash trifecta. 10 Bandits was only 26th that year, and it was the year that Chariots of Fire won the Best Picture Oscar.
Another Ian Holm movie.
Big, strong year for movies for sure. On the music scene, 1981. This is the Sessions Presents era of modern music, Mike.
Oh, yes.
All the original hits by the original artists. You had on the charts the week this movie came out. You had Private Eyes, Watching You. Now the Estranged Hollow Notes, right? They don't talk to each other.
No, they're very. It got ugly.
Which one's Garfunkel? I bet I know which one. You had Here I Am, that one that you love, Mike. That's Air Supply, of course.
Yes.
Lou Gramm was Waiting for a Girl Like You.
It was in his Chess King outfit. Just
to clear up some controversy per the English accent in honor of this film. He is not dead. We talked about him in some capacity the last time. But yeah, he's not passed away. He's just not part of Warner anymore, sadly. He had Let's Get Physical by Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah. Great video.
Yeah. Every Little Thing You Do Is Magic by The Police. And then Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones, which I thought was an older song than that. But
no.
Yeah, that was 81.
Is that from Tattoo You?
That's correct, yeah. Which is now the opening song for all of their shows. That's the tradition for them now. And since this movie came out, the Rolling Stones have performed at least 916 shows. So
and I remember seeing them in 1990, and it was supposed to be their last tour.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
We're not going to do any more after this one. Okay, 34 years later.
Yeah, Mick's 30 years older than us, and he's on stage right now. Like, so there you go. Some other things in 81, they're kind of neat to me, at least. Video game Frogger came out. And at the time, it was one of the hardest games because there was a staggering 9 ways you could die in Frogger, Mike. I executed all 9 of those quite frequently.
On the first level.
Yeah. He-Man action figures were all the rage, Mike. The Masters of the Universe collection.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Dr. K will give me some of his action figures next time I bring my other dog in.
Do you really want a Skeletor?
I do. This is the year that the styling, profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing son of a gun, Ric Flair defeated Dusty Rhodes, Mike, for his first heavyweight title in wrestling.
Heavyweight. Love it.
Dusty Rhodes was quite a character, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Great body on that guy.
Hey, man. It seems like those 2 weight classes were a little different back then.
Yeah. I think Dusty Rhodes was 2 different weight classes for the top of his body and the bottom of his body. Yeah. The biggest chest in the world. It was like an orange on a toothpick. With the blonde
the perm.
Current perm. It was fantastic. Yeah. On the other side of the spectrum of sports, you had Muhammad Ali fought his last fight where he lost to Trevor Berbick.
Oh, yeah. His last few fights were depressing.
Sad, really. It's talking about leaving things on a bad note. Mike, let's
Yay.
I think we've probably given enough preamble. Let's kind of jump in the theater here if you're ready. So you ready to kind of revisit this let's fever dream of a movie. Let's be honest.
Let's watch something. Let's watch something weird.
All right, let's do it. So Mike,
weird.
Hit the button. So we see Kevin, who bears an odd resemblance to Badger from Better Off Dead, Mike. I'm just going to throw that out
a little bit. Yeah, he didn't. He didn't. I was disappointed to make a space shuttle in that.
I bet he did know how to pick up trashy women, though.
Yeah, and get 3 of them in his room.
He didn't need a book. He's sitting there. Kevin's a bit of a history buff, and he's sitting there with his family, and the family's inattentive of him, and they're sitting on their plastic furniture. It gave me a lot of the Harry Potter's uncle and aunt vibes thing. So he gets sent to bed, and next thing you know, his wardrobe starts shaking, and a horse and a knight jump out of it and run across his bedroom. And then as it leaves, there was this scream that happened at the end that reminded me of the Krull scream. Remember when the bad guys in Krull would die and they would scream and they would
Oh yeah,
like those little
make that sound.
slug things would burrow into the earth. So that freaked me. I was already freaked out here already. Um, so he tries to convince his mom and dad of what happened. Of course, they're not going to have it. So the next night, he's ready, Mike. He brings his torch, as they call it in England, or a flashlight, to us noobs or us plebes. And he's ready. So he's waiting for it. And sure enough, the wardrobe opens again the next night, and that's when the bandits show up. All the little people, the robbers, the burglars, show up, and they've got a map given to them by the supreme being that they've quote unquote borrowed slash stolen, and they're using that map to jump across the universe. And one of those portals just happens to be in little Kevin's bedroom. And him being a history buff and having a childlike sense of wonderment, he just chases along for the ride, right? So
yeah,
and the supreme being finds him, not the supreme pizza, Mike, but the supreme being.
We have a supreme pizza.
Other Mystery Science Theater guys look it up. But he ends up chasing him down the hallway, and it's pretty scary. And they end up in Pasta Fagioli, or no, Castiglione,
Castiglione, yeah.
Yeah, where
Pasta Fagioli.
Yeah, where Napoleon Bonaparte's having a battle, but he's not really in the battle. He's just nearby in a castle watching a puppet show with this trademark arm tucked into his vest and laughing, and bit of a souse, Mike, bit of a drunk. The time bandits know he's got a significant amount of cash. They kind of cozy up to him. They do a little sausage dance for them, and as Napoleon warms up to them, and he loves little people, Mike, for the obvious reasons, right?
Yeah, I was
They didn't
kind of
press that
hammering
too
home
much,
just
did
a
they?
little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
But he loves them, and as he falls asleep, they quickly rob him in his sleep, and then jump into their next portal, which is just essentially the movie is just a series of hopping into one portal and getting into different adventures. Kind of like a Princess
Yeah,
Bride vibe a little bit there.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
If you thought Ridley Scott made Napoleon look bad, well,
Yeah. We should mention that Napoleon is played by Bilbo Baggins here.
yeah.
Yeah. So the next place they kind of jump to is the Middle Ages, where they literally crash into a carriage, horse-driven carriage with Michael Palin and Shelley Duvall, the recently departed, sadly, Shelley Duvall.
Yeah. Playing Pansy.
Yeah. One thing I loved about this backstory here, Mike, I was doing some research, and the little people did a lot of their stunts, right? Because,
That's awesome.
Obviously they're reserve stuff person, little guys. So they had to do a lot of their stunts, and they weren't getting the crash part right. So Terry Gilliam took matters into his own hand and kind of showed him how to do it. He says, "Watch me." And he actually did the jump and landed right on top of Shelley Duvall.
Oh, jeez.
Severely injuring her, which I thought was just fantastic. Because Shelley Duvall has been tortured her whole film career. Right after this, she PTSD with Stanley Kubrick in The Shining.
That's
awful.
right. Yeah. He made her go crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how she. Dr. Phil had nothing left by the time she got to her, man. But yeah, so there's a scene where they're star-crossed lovers, and their tribulations go through several different parts of history. I'll kind of get into that a little bit. There's a gang that comes in and like steals all their stuff, and they run off to get it back and hopefully gang up with them. And it turns out that this rival gang,
meet the boss.
We want to meet the boss, and it ends up that they're Robin Hood's gang, right?
Yeah, I love the build up. Like you see this camp where the guy's arm wrestling somebody else, tears his arm off, and they have they're having a spitting contest.
That's a very Python. Yeah,
there's guys picking their nose, and you're like, God, who is this boss going to be? And out steps dandy John Cleese.
And John Cleese, again, as I mentioned, far and away my favorite scene in the movie. He's just overly polite, and he has this like guy named Redgrave who's like his right hand. It speaks gibberish. It has to be translated. But he decides he's gonna, thanks to the bandits for their contribution, which they're not expecting, and he starts giving away all their stuff to the local poor. Not before Mr. Redgrave punches their lights out upon receipt of their new wealth. He says, "Is that absolutely necessary?" He goes, "Yeah, it is."
Yeah.
And it's in typical John Cleese, he plays that role perfectly. And like his last line as they're party, as he's been overly polite to these guys the whole time, he goes, "Awful people," and that's it.
Yeah, it's like its own little Monty Python sketch, and just
yeah,
the whole scene.
So that's the second act is kind of where they get a little bit deeper into the jumping around from time and space, and they go back way back when to BC era, and they come across Agamemnon, played by Sean Connery. He's fighting a Minotaur, and little Kevin goes rogue and lands through a portal and lands on top of the Minotaur and helps him kill him. And then Connery kind of adopts him as his own little son, and ultimately he's the bandits come back and catch up with Kevin, and they take off again, leaving that father figure out of Kevin's life once more. And all while this is happening, they're being watched through this thing, kind of like the Wizard of Oz. They're looking at the evil genius who's been banished by the Supreme Being into this fortress, is looking to get this power back. He wants that map to take over the world because he's the first evil that has ever been made. And he decides his plot is to he kind of takes over Og, one of the bandits, and
the dumb one.
The dim one.
They all, I meant to say, I said earlier, they all seem to have their own, personality in a way. Yeah.
Right. He decides to lure those guys into a trap by presenting the bandits' main thing they want to steal. It's called the most fabulous object in the world, Mike. And we don't know what that is, but we know the bandits want it. So that's his trap to lure them in to get that map back. There's another scene where they go to the ill-fated Titanic. We get another scene with Michael Palin and Shelley Duvall. Ends the same way. Usually just them getting humiliated and hurt, which second time in a row. Of course, the Titanic meets this iceberg, and they get stuck again. They jump through the portal again. They end up on a ship in the middle of the ocean, and which is inhabited by a troll.
It makes it funny later when you realize that David Warner is in the movie Titanic.
He's in the movie Titanic, yeah. So they get on the ship that's inhabited by a troll and Katherine Hellman from Who's the Boss? Who do you think's easier to work with, the troll or Tony Danza, Mike?
Oh my gosh. Alyssa Milano. Throw her in there too.
They do little shenanigans and throw the troll off because they're going to get eaten. And then it turns out that ship is not really a ship, Mike. It's actually the hat to a big giant. Which just freaked me out.
It must have been an English thing, those two stories, because they're in the land of legends.
Yeah.
I imagine there must be a story about an ogre and his wife that live on a boat or something. I wasn't familiar with that, but I thought that might be like an English thing. But I just let that one go. I was like, "Who's a giant?" And I was like, "That's not even kind of like American folklore." So, oh yeah, this is English. Duh.
But
when the giant smushes the little troll cabin, that's just it's one of those why, but it's also great because you can just see these little Muppets from a distance. You see them wandering around. And you hear him it sounds like the kids crying, the dad and mom are complaining. And you're like, wow, this is a story inside a story. And all of a sudden the giant just steps on their hut and just crushes them.
That takes care of that. But they escape the clutches of the giant by, I think, drugging him, right? They put him to sleep. There's sleeping potion in the ship. And that kind of leads to the final act where the evil being, played by David Warner, lures them to this spot where there's this invisible shield with the lines. Oh, that's what an invisible shield looks like. It's a good joke. But they smash through it and they see the fortress and they go in there and they fall right for the trap. And turns out the most fabulous object in the world is a dinette set. You got me at this point. I was
I was like, oh my gosh,
whatever. Yeah,
this doesn't look like a trap at all.
Yeah. So they go through the maze, and as they get there, they're met by, of course, the evil genius. He steals the map, turns Og into a pig, and then as they try to escape, they're caught again, and that brings on the big finale and this is where what the hell stuff starts kicking in, Mike, especially from my first watch as a young kid.
Yeah,
there's a 20-minute scene here where the bandits bring in reinforcements from history to do their battle with the evil genius. And it's essentially just a 20-minute bloodbath. They just show up and they get blown up and killed. That horrible, like all the knights get the monument he builds out of the dead knights impaled on the
Oh
swords.
yeah, it's like you don't actually see it, but you just see him go into a cloud of gas, and then when they come out, it's just this kebab of knights.
Yeah, he blows up his friend that he turned into a dog for no reason.
I know, right? And they're like happy about it. Oh, thank you,
Yeah,
sir. And they blow him up.
right. And like those cows or the horse skull like ring wraith things that
Oh
are
yeah,
dispatched.
those are
Those were in my
disturbing.
nightmares for a good bit of time. But they keep bringing on new armaments and new weapons and new people, but they're it's like your weapons are useless against me, Mike.
No,
They
no.
just
Even
yeah,
Wally in his little laser
yeah.
jet. Yeah.
And poor little Fidget gets smashed, which is
Yeah.
sad. Poor R2D2 gets killed.
R2, no, not R2.
Yeah, poor little R2. And it all at the you think it's like there's no way this is ever going to end, and then the Supreme Being shows up. I think it's played by Ralph Richardson, right? Right, so,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
And he's just your typical English gentleman here, which I just thought was fantastic. He's just a very low key performance as the ruler of the universe.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
pretty good.
and he insists that everybody just cleans everything up and explains to him why he created evil and how important it was, and tells them to get on their way. And he goes, "Well, Fidget's dead." He goes, "Well, that's no excuse not to clean up." So he brings him back to life, and he's just very calm. And of course, Kevin here is can't figure as the
Why
new
those
one
people
here.
die? It's
Yeah,
like, oh,
and practically explains to him very matter of factly why this was important as part of developing the world, and he's left to live with that. And it was a neat little take on the origins of the universe and all that thing, but for
it's very
sure,
very adult,
yeah, yeah. So, and I'll talk about that here at the end. That's where I had a little discussion about how I felt about this movie. But um, so yeah, so they cleaned up all the evil stuff, save for one little piece, Mike, which
Yes.
gets as Kevin goes back to his home, he's transported back as the bandits go back to the give the map back to
He's
the
yeah,
yeah
he seemingly wakes up from a dream.
yeah yeah. And the house is on fire because the roast is burning, so we think. And Sean Connery makes another appearance as the firefighter here. And it turns out that Mom has burned the roast, but it turns out that roast is actually that piece of pure evil from
Little piece of David Warner
yeah.
came through.
And then as Kevin looks on in horror, his mom and dad touch it and they blow up.
And the fire truck just rides away.
Yeah.
I swear I thought I remembered a scene where like Sean Connery gets out and says, it looks like you need a new dad, Kevin, and like lets him ride in the fire truck. But that didn't happen. They
Right.
just leave him.
All the authorities in the entire neighborhood see Kevin's parents get blown up and they all just leave and Kevin's left there.
Cue George Harrison music.
Yeah, and there you go, kids. Yeah. Go to bed, why don't you?
Yeah, very
But
dark ending.
yeah, so there you go. So that even just saying it out loud, I can't even believe what I just saw.
Yeah, I know we'll get to it when we talk about this movie, but that was like the thing that like just almost shocked me after watching it again. It was like,
Yeah.
wait, he just is left like that,
Yeah.
And
So
roll credits.
So the movie starts out weird. It gets really weird in the middle. The last 30 minutes are a fever dream of like, what the hell did I just see? And then the movie ends with Kevin's mom and dad getting blown up and he's left alone. So that's what you're supposed to watch there. It's PG, very PG movie by the way.
But we can make beans into peas.
Yeah, so let's talk about awards and accolades briefly, and then we'll kind of talk about what this movie did to us. So this had a $6.5 million opening and a $5 million budget, so relatively successful. I had a $42 million box office haul, domestic and worldwide. Not too bad. It didn't win any major awards. Won a lot of sci-fi awards. It was nominated for a lot of sci-fi awards, but didn't really win too many out of them. It was reimagined as a comic book in 1983. Some notoriety. We talked about the remake in 2024. That's driven primarily by Waika Tatiti and Jermaine Clement. I think they both star as well in there. So we have our reservations, as we mentioned earlier, but we'll see.
He's an acquired taste, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. But that comes out July 24th, 2024, for those that are listening and interested. You can see if it's a little more palatable for you. We'll see. All right, so this movie is loaded with WTF moments, Mike. It's one of those movies where people of our generation are probably very similar to what we're just going to say here. I've probably seen it, probably have a formative opinion of it one way or the other. But let's talk about ours since we're the host of the podcast. So, Mike, let's talk about your impression of it when you watched this as a young guy, and then again as a grumpy old jerk, and what changed.
Yeah, this was an HBO staple in the early 80s when, like in 82, 83. I remember watching it so many times back then. And, kind of like Clash of the Titans, it had that same kind of place in my brain as one of those movies that, like, I knew every part of it without even knowing it until I rewatched it. And I hadn't seen it in probably close to 40 years. And watching it just now, it was like, it was the definition for me of like, this nostalgia podcast. Like there were so many scenes in that movie that I didn't realize were in that movie until I rewatched it, and then I'm like, yeah, that's where that's from, or yeah, okay. I could almost too predict the next line because I knew it so well, but I hadn't seen it so long, and it was
Really?
almost, yeah. I mean, I remember how like bat crap crazy some of the scenes were, and so I was kind of I knew that was going to happen, but even then, it was unsettling to see this. And
Yeah, that's
like
a
I said,
good word. That's a good word for it.
even the ending, I guess as a kid, I hadn't realized it had that darkened ending to it until I saw it again. I'm like, wait a minute. And there were some scenes like that, seeing it as an adult too. It's just kind of like, okay, that kind of humor would go over me as a kid. I wouldn't have probably picked up on that or picked up on
Yeah.
the, you know what I mean? I like the very capitalistic keeping up with the Joneses parents, like, oh, so and so down the street has the newest microwave. And just those kind of scenes you're just thinking, oh, they're just parents. I'm not even listening to them. And, as a kid, you're like thinking, okay, they're just dumb, clueless parents, which they
Yeah.
were, but there's also a backstory to it that you don't know until you watch it with a different eye. But this movie's ultimately like Alice in Wonderland meets Doctor Who in a way. It's got all kinds of crazy elements to it. The actual history part of it's kind of interesting, that like you say, it really doesn't get obviously six drawers coming out of your little dressing cabinet is a little odd, but it really doesn't get crazy like you say until you end up meeting this evil genius guy, and then from there it gets a little weird.
It got weird, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like even going to the fortress and getting trapped in the cages and this, but there's just so much in this movie, and it made me wonder who this was ultimately aimed for. Even back then, I'm like, okay, is this not? It's almost too dark and creepy for a kid. You got what?
Yeah.
Skull wraiths, like you say. You got severed feet, arms getting ripped off. You have mom and dad exploding. Various various other exploding people and an exploding dog. And you see that and you're like, okay, this is not this is kind of violent for I can't believe. I guess the first thing I thought it was, I can't believe I watched this when I was like 12 years old or 11 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, is a fever dream, like you say. And watching it now, I'm like, okay, who is this really aimed for? I mean, it had some funny moments, and it's an incredibly interesting story and movie.
Yeah.
But you're watching it thinking, okay, well, I watched this as a kid, and I can't believe I watched this as a kid. It's just it had that kind of, but again, it had subtle things in adult. Even the whole Agamemnon scene, where if you know the story of Agamemnon, ultimately his wife kills him. And in the movie, I don't think she had a word in the movie, but she's always eyeing him suspiciously.
She's leering, isn't she?
She leers at her husband constantly. And okay, as a kid, you're like, you have no idea that was an actual mythical story that was written. But in the movie, it's done very well, and that kind of that little touch right there, like you say, with some of with even just some of the throwaway lines they have, or even the whole, I guess the theme at the end with Ralph Richardson coming in and saying, "There's good and evil. This was a test for you. I created this. There were deeper meanings to it that an adult would only grasp, but there was a lot of kiddie kind of stuff, and just the whole little gang of little people. And it's aimed at a particular audience, but I'm at a loss to figure out if this was like for a general mass audience. And
I'm right there with you, Mike. And again, it's kind of scary how common our opinions are, because my first thought was that it's probably my first time watching this was, again, same as you, probably 12 years old as a kid on HBO, and I don't think I watched it all the way through. I had to give myself, I couldn't rate it out of 5. I'd probably give myself an incomplete because I don't think I ever could make it through the entire thing. I would watch clips of it
Oh yeah.
and see this weird stuff. So I had association through to that. I think watching it again a couple days ago was the first time I've ever watched it like all the way through. I knew enough about it, but it's an interesting phenomenon here is like it's my first thought is this is too existential for its like target kid audience. And then I started thinking, well, like you said, well, who is the audience? Because when I was watching it as a kid, it was probably too adult. And when I watched it as an adult, I thought it was too kid. And it's like it's somewhere in that middle.
Yeah.
And you can't really quantify if one of the things I use as a benchmark to whether I like a movie or not is if I would refer someone to watch it. I don't know if I can recommend this movie to anybody that hasn't already probably seen it,
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Because I mean, first of all, you've got the British humor, which most people, let's face it, don't get. And then that stacked on top of the weird concept and the weird themes with that British comedic narrative, that's a tough sell. I can't see anybody under 30 watching this and liking it. Really, which is probably the primer for making the new reimagining or whatever you want to call it. But it's probably got its audience of fans who are like the Holy Grail fans and the Meaning of Life fans and those. I mean, that's probably that niche that it holds on to.
Right.
I don't think it's got a whole lot of crossover appeal per se. But
I agree. Yeah.
yeah.
I just remembered as another scene too. As a kid, I never even thought of, but like Agamemnon when you first see his little throne or whatever, and he's like he orders the execution of these 3 guys that are led out in chains, and the next thing he's showing Kevin a magic trick.
Yeah, what's going on?
That little 2-minute scene kind of is like this movie in a nutshell.
That's the embodiment of this movie. Is like, how are you supposed to feel? And we've had this dilemma before. It's like, where are you going with this, guys?
Yeah, exactly. The tone is so weird.
What's so great about that Python crowd is they don't care. They make their films, and then if you come along for the ride, that's fine. But they're not going to compromise their vision or their art or whatever just to get a mass audience. So you got to respect that at least. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I was expecting to. The pacing was it's a slow burn in some spots. Not all the jokes hit. I don't know if that was just an issue with timing or relevance or whatever. I didn't dislike it by any means. I would watch it again.
They had a joke. It was funny when David Warner's asking his like henchmen to describe to him what computers are, and they're looking at the little pool, and they're like, "Now tell me about computers, or tell me about calculators." Then he mentioned something like I forgot the term, but it was like something trunk codes or something. And I look, it was the one thing I looked up, but it was something to do with like the British phone company's toll-free numbers. And I'm like, it was an inside joke of an inside joke. And it was just like, I guess it would have been humorous if, I knew more about it.
But if this is marketed to like 12-year-old kids, because the main character is 12-year-old kids in history, are they going to get that? No. Your dad might, so that's odd.
And that, I guess that brings me to a point where this would be the perfect material to do a remake of, and say, okay, let's aim. If Taika Waititi does this and says, okay, let's aim this for the kids, great. I would be all for that. Or, hey, let's make this an adult themed comedy. Okay, I mean that'd be kind of interesting if they do kind of, I would imagine they do go one of those directions.
My concern is going to be like the most recent Star Wars outing, The Acolyte, which was horrendous. The first Star Wars vehicle I ever stopped. I watched about the first 12, 15 minutes. Like, this is Degrassi Junior High. This isn't Star Wars. I don't know what they did with that thing. I think everything's geared to young adult audiences now. And my concern is that I don't know if that's the biggest demographic or whatever, the people that are most likely to watch, but it's just it's killing franchises. It's killing canon of existing stuff like that. It's just I don't know. We'll see.
The audience is not as dumb as what they're making.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of dumb, we were dumb kids when we watched this, and for the most part, it scared the hell out of us. And we thought for this week's installment of You just made the list, pal. We're going to go back to an earlier topic we discussed a few years ago, Mike, when we talked about things that as feral Gen X kids, pop culture exposures that really freaked us out and scarred us for life. Just to get you up to speed, the last time we talked about this, Mike talked about Salem's Lot, little boys scratching on the window. He talked about the It TV series with the dismembered head in the fridge, and I think Donald Sutherland, another R.I.P.
Oh yeah,
in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that last scene. I of course talked about the Zuni fetish doll from the Karen Black trilogy of terror, the Hamburglar, 70s Hamburglar. And my fear of that thing has only grown since I brought it back up again, Mike, because I'd had that buried for a while. Now I'm even more afraid of it. Therapy is not working. And then the Willy Wonka scene in the tunnel.
Yes.
We actually did a podcast about that one. So those were the big hitters, but we realized that we were just scratching the surface of things that really freaked us out. And covering this movie and its odd ending and its odd direction that some of the characters' paths took scarred us. And we thought there's a whole lot out there to farm. So this week we're going to go back and talk about more things that freaked us out as kids. So Mike, let's let's go around the terror train again. And why don't you lead us off with a few that maybe let's do three.
Yeah. Well,
and then we'll go from there.
In the spirit of Time Bandits, I wanted to steer away from the horror movies, because obviously a horror movie is, that's kind of freaks you out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of the point of a horror movie. So I kind of go with things that were more like directly childhood scarring kind of related stuff.
Yeah, that ultimately kind of hit harder at the end of the day.
And for me, it was, it's by the time this movie came out, 1981, 82, when I actually saw it, it's that pre-teenage for me that you see this stuff and it makes the most impression, which leads me to our first movie, which came out many years before that, but it was I didn't see it till probably 81, 82, but it was Alice in Wonderland, the Walt Disney animated version from 1951.
Oh, that one. Okay.
I swear, watching that movie, I could have sworn it was like, I had to look up the date, by the way, because I could have sworn it was from like the late 60s. That movie is so
51, huh? Yeah.
So psychedelic and like movement of color and just, I'm not gonna say Dutch angles, but there were so many elements of that movie that were so well done and well animated, but it's so creepy and scary. It's another one of those kind of themes where it's a kid that's transported into a world that they don't understand what's going on and they're confused and lost, kind of like Time Bandits. And she's trying to just get home, and but she sees all these weird creatures that are lifted straight from the Lewis Carroll book, and it's so creepy to me when I watched it. I had nightmares about that, especially the Cheshire Cat and that stupid smoking caterpillar. Who are you? And you have the theme of like the Queen of Hearts, or want to chop off people's heads constantly. It's like
off with their heads. Yeah.
I mean, just amazing kind of stuff for like a kid to see. And again, you watch it with our set of eyes now. It's like, okay, was that for kids, or is that kind of for more of a mass audience? It had to know on this kind of like vibes to me, and that's my first choice. That's as far as a creep out movie.
Yeah, good pick. Kids had to be tough back then. If you're gonna be dumb, you better be tough.
That's right,
as the song says. So my next one, my first one here is again, I wanted to do the same thing you did. I want to do things that weren't supposed to be scary, but were anyway, and that's why they kind of ultimately kind of resonate a little bit more. Thing that really freaked me out as a kid was from the Sid and Marty Krofft show Land of the Lost.
Oh, that's a good one.
The Sleestaks.
Yeah.
There's these like reptilian figures that just kind of hissed, and there was just
their mouths never moved.
Yeah. So what was funny, the show implied that there are like 7,000 of these things on that planet that they lived in, but they only had 3 costumes. So you never saw more than 3 at a time.
Usually you can see the zipper too.
Oh yeah, and it was like the wrinkles in the suit, whatever. But they're all slow and lumbering around. But I think one wore like a red vest. He was the leader.
One wore tennis shoes.
Snappy dresser, yeah. But I just they always just that menacing part of them. They always had like the zombie walk behind them, and poor Marshall, Will, and Holly were always attacked by these things, and
they communicated with a skull.
Yes. So, but I remember that was a staple of mine for a long time. That dumb show because I have my affinity for dinosaurs, but I always really disliked that, and I was generally usually afraid. They were always in my closet.
Oh yeah,
bed, they're always
that breathing. Is that breathing?
Yeah, I always heard that. So anytime the radiator went off, that was a sleep stack. So Sid and Marty Krofft can rot in hell, and that's my first pick is sleep stacks. So there you go, Mike.
Man, anybody created space nuts is okay with me. But the what scared me was Chaka, the little monkey man. Oh my gosh, I hated that guy. Well. I hated Chaka. Okay, kids, we're going way back for this one. This is what I call a deep cut movie. But
okay, I like this.
It's one of those movies my uncle made me watch. It was
oh, here we go. Okay,
I had never heard of it. I've never seen. I saw it one time on like a late show on like a local television there out of Augusta, and I've never seen it come up anywhere since. It's the weirdest thing, but it's called The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. I don't know if anyone's heard of this movie, but it had a big budget and it had a big acclaim when it came out in 1953. I think it was a Stanley Kramer production, so it had some money behind it. It had Hans Conried, who he's more of a voice actor. He was like the voice of Captain Hook from Peter Pan and Snidely Whiplash, But he played as a piano instructor in this movie, and it focuses on a little kid who he has a pretty good life, but the only thing he regrets is having to go to his piano lesson. And Hans Conried is his teacher, and he's this real strict kind of guy. And he's like, "No, you're gonna play like this." I don't think he like hits him because trust me, I only saw this movie once, and it scarred me because I was taking piano lessons at the same time. And he has this mom that won't listen to him. He tries to tell his mom, it's like, "I don't want to go to piano lessons." And he's a meanie, kind of thing. And he tries to tell like this other guy doesn't listen to him, but he falls asleep, and he wakes up and he's trapped in this piano teacher's castle, and this guy has like 499 other kids with him, hence the 5,000 fingers. And he's created the world's largest piano. This is a Dr. Seuss story, by the way. This is the only movie. This is the only movie Dr. Seuss ever did, and there's a reason for that. I'll tell you in a second. But he created the world's biggest piano, and he has all 500 kids play on it, and he basically has them tied to it so they can't like escape from this. It's a prison.
It's like a human centipede thing.
It is. It's really bizarre. The kids even wear little beanie caps that have a hand on them, and it has this. I don't know if this was like the first movie that really employ like Dutch angles and stuff and real creepy close-ups, but it's off-putting. And it was a total bomb at the box office. I think most people walked out of the screening. Then he make his budget back. I think Dr. Seuss himself, Geisel, he refused to ever make another screenplay after this. Mm-hmm. But you talk about a fever dream of a movie, and the most ridiculous title, like I said, 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. Look it up. Supposedly it's a cult classic, but like I said, I've never seen it reshown anywhere. I haven't even bothered searching on Roku, but I would like to. Maybe this movie might be more creepier than Salem's Lot or The Shining for me to rewatch because it would peel off some scabs probably.
All right, challenge accepted. All right, so $5,000 Mr. T. All right, look at that. Perfect. All right, so my next pick, I'm going to go back to the well here, Mike, and I'm going to talk about Sid and Marty Krofft again.
Oh, no.
But this one's a little bit different. This was probably designed to scare you a little bit, so that's maybe violates my principles a little bit. But I'm going to go with Witchy Poo.
Oh, from Puffin Stuff.
From HR Puffin Stuff. So you talk about weird, guys. This is what we had when we were kids, right? We didn't have iPads to watch anything we wanted to if we were in the car. Right? We had to go home and watch this stuff. And HR Puffin Stuff was this odd show about this little kid Jimmy that gets lost on an island. He's got Freddie the flute. It's not really a flute; it's more of a recorder.
Or fife. Yeah, it might be. Yeah,
I'm debating whether it's a flute or not.
You look that up with the 5,000 Dr. T figures.
Yeah, that's the important thing to be talking about, whether it's a fife or not. But it's just a very disturbing thing. And Witchy Poo was played by this actress like Billy Davis, and I think she made a cameo in Bewitched once, Mike, right?
I think so.
Bewitched. But she drove around this like souped up hot rod, like
it's like the
Groovy Ghoulies
Dragula or
type
something.
thing. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Drago. And she had this weird
her henchman was kind of weird too.
weird bird in the sidecar. And she was always like super animated, like when they ever cut to her. I think they use the same footage over and over again.
Yeah,
Like
it was sped up. Yeah,
it looked like her just on a Peloton bike or something, just going crazy. But she had the weird makeup and the big long nose, and she looked like one of those things from The Witches, that movie that came out later. Just horrifying imagery, just awful, and always trying to get Freddy the flute from Jimmy. And then can we talk about what a lame hero HR Puffin stuff was? They claim the HR Puffin stuff saved Jimmy, but all he did was tell Jimmy to jump out of the boat, and then Jimmy swam to shore, and that's the extent.
He had a real odd Southern accent too. I never could figure that out as a kid.
HR Puffin stuff, he sucks.
Wow.
But Witchy Poo is horrible, and again, I don't know what was going on in the offices of Sid and Marty Krofft, but between that and Sigmund the Sea Monster or some of the other carnal things they put out for British television as well, just infected the minds of kids for generations.
Oh yeah.
The damage.
You know what's so weird about that? Sid and Marty Krofft, they were like they had like segments they would do on certain shows, and it would be like a 10 or 15-minute segment, and they would show you the start of it. It's like, oh wow, cool, it's Sigmund, or it's the Space Nuts, or it's
Space Nuts, yeah.
But if ever the Bugaloos came up, I had to like turn the channel because that was my trigger. I could not watch that.
Were the Bugaloos like the white guys that had like lumpy heads and stuff like that, or
no? They were white, but they were actually like white people. But they were like girls and guys that like could fly, and they were basically looked like humans, but they had wings. So they didn't really have like 6 legs. They had like regular legs. It was. I just remember that song. It was they're in the air and everywhere, flying high, flying low.
Awful.
Flying awful.
All right, that's fine. So Mike, let's get your last pick and maybe some of your.
I'm disturbed now. I don't know if I can get.
I think we got to wrap it up here. I'm getting freaked out. So let's do your last pick and maybe a handful of honorable mentions. If you have any.
I got. Well, my obvious honorable mentions here are Willy Wonka. Okay, can't go without that one. Clash of the Titans, as I mentioned earlier. Is the Medusa character in that movie terrifying. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that whole little, I know it's stop motion animation, it's not so scary anymore, but and as a kid you watch that, you're like, okay, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Flash Gordon, we mentioned this on our podcast of Flash Gordon, that movie, just the scene alone of the guy sticking his hand in the tree of woe or whatever. That was enough for me.
2-parter podcast, guys, go back and check it out.
There you go. 2001 Space Odyssey was another movie that really freaked me out just because of the isolation and the fact that a computer could control you. And as a kid watching it, you're like, this is boring. I want more. I want to see PP, more space fights. But, you're still kind of unnerved when you actually see, seeing floating out in space, and you realize, okay,
not good.
Hal is taking over. But my third pick is Popeye, the 1981 Robin Williams movie.
That's so appropriate. I didn't even think of it.
Yeah, it was such a good cartoon. I loved the Popeye, Fleischer cartoons that came out in the 30s and the 40s. They had some weird stuff about it, like Alice the Goon and the other land he traveled to. And, everybody, Wimpy was kind of weird, Mm-hmm. But I thought of this movie when I saw Shelley Duvall. I was like, well, yeah, she was in that really creepy Popeye movie that came out in 81. And it was a David Altman movie, which I'd forgotten. And Robert Altman, thank you. Yeah. And he had, he was always able to get just an enormous cast of people in his movies, and almost too much going on. But I just remember this movie. What I remembered the most about it was the problems they had just filming this stupid thing. It was like done on this island that it's kind of like Waterworld. I think they had problems with flooding or washing away. Yeah. The characters were very off-putting the way they were done. They were almost trying to ape the cartoon too much. Shelley Duvall as Olive Oil is like the perfect casting ever.
The role she was born to play.
Yeah, I know, right? And Robin Williams is Popeye. He did a really good impersonation of him, but it's the visuals in that movie that just, even to this day, I think bothered me. Was just the off-putting bright colors and just the setting of it. Like it wasn't. It was kind of like every building like a halfway house and or a drug den, and everything was ramshackled and barely holding together. And There was just something about it that was just unsettling. And I remember I've been excited. I actually saw it in the theater as a kid, and it was extremely disappointing, as well as probably most people who saw it at the time. But
Yeah, it was another HBO thing on all the time.
Yeah.
And Ray Walston, Mr. Hand as Poop Deck Peppy.
Oh, Poop Deck, yeah.
Oh, this
it had Paul. It had great act. Like that, it had Paul Dooley. It had the big guy playing Brutus from that movie Dune.
Yeah.
And it just you're like thinking, okay, this should be good, but no, it's not.
No.
So there you go. Don't watch it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one. Completely appropriate. I wish I would have thought of that one. All right, so my last pick is going to be a little off the shelf, maybe. But before that, let me talk about some of my honorable mentions. Just the concept of Ouija boards, just alone, freaked me out as a kid. I'm not going to name names to not incriminate the innocent, but I actually had a friend that returned the Ouija board to Toys R Us because it didn't work. that's not a joke.
It's one of those.
Yeah, so there you go. The 3 Minute a Baby Kid. That was an urban legend. There's a stand-up cutout of Ted Danson on cardboard that was in the background of a shot in that movie. And the urban legend was that that's a boy that died on the set. And it's been debunked, but the legend is much more interesting as a story. So, but I remember renting that movie and all the room screaming when they saw it, because it's much more fun to pretend it's a ghost story as opposed to just a cut out of Ted Danson. I always thought the scene from A Large Marge in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, that kind of freaked me out the first time I saw that.
Oh, jeez.
I think we can't not talk about the poltergeist clown, Mike. I think that's do its justice here. But my third pick is going to be a little bit left of center. I'm going to talk about the TV show In Search Of.
Oh, man.
Which ran from 1977 to 1982, I think mostly on syndicated networks.
Yeah.
We watched ours on WGN in Chicago. But it was hosted by Leonard Nimoy. And I remember it being dark and grainy and scary. And the focus of the show was they spent an hour long, like unexplained phenomenon for the most part. And there were a few shows that stuck out to me more than the rest. One was about, they did an episode called the Great Lake Triangle, which was akin to the Bermuda Triangle thing. Because, in the 70s, everybody was really loved to talk about the Bermuda Triangle. It was very in fashion. But there's a comparable story about the Great Lake Triangle, and I lived in that area, and that always kind of freaked me out. So they did a couple shows about Bigfoot, always that's kind of scared me, because in the 70s, Bigfoot was a horror story, as not so much a urban legend like it is now. And there's a show about the Abominable Snowman, which is kind of the same concept. But yeah, so those shows freaked me out. There's a show about Loch Ness.
Oh yeah.
They had sometimes they would do dramatizations, or it would be like eerie still footage or photographs they would zoom in on. And then you had Nimoy's weird, narrative and the tone of his voice, and they had the weird space agey music behind it. But it was stuff that you watch.
There's no, I don't interrupt. There's no winking or at the camera, and there's no
no.
He's very matter of fact. This is the news, and it's true.
It was presented to titillate you and make you think, and what all it did was made me sleep with the lights on, because after we'd watch these on Sunday afternoon, and then that night, oh, well, God damn it, Bigfoot's in my closet now too. That right next to this Lee stack. So, but yeah, In Search Of, it's still out there. They've rebooted it a couple times.
Yeah,
it's okay, but
it was funny as they had it done by the guy who played Spock in the J.J.
Zachary Quinto played. Yeah, you break. All right, so I think we've gone probably far enough about things that freak us out, Mike. I'm already going to have trouble sleeping now anyway. So let's kind of move on to wrap up the show. So, if you like what you heard today, check us out on Instagram. We're at Grumpy Nostalgia. You can send us an email at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube channel. We got some video up there finally. So let's get some subscribers up there, guys. Call to action. Just casually go over to YouTube and like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. Kind of grow that. I need some more inspiration for I'm going to sit down and spend a week editing and do another video. So pick one that you might want to see and send us a note, and we'd certainly convert that to a video. So we want to thank you guys again for the growth we've seen. Another growth spurt here. Downloads have gone up significantly again. And we kind of jump up a few exponential spots, and we kind of plateau for a while. And but when we see new listeners come to the show, it's inspiring for me and Mike both, because putting out a show every 10 days doesn't sound like a lot, but the amount of time it takes to clear out schedule to watch a movie and to get our stupid schedules to match up and to write these things is sometimes it can be a little, defeating, but we love doing it, and just to have it kind of come back and people enjoying it and listening to it is a really good thing.
So, every listener we get is just a bonus, because kind of like this Time Bandits movie, we're like Monty Python. We do this podcast because we like doing it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it no matter what. If you listen, you listen. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine. Yeah. It's what we like doing, and we hope you can enjoy it along with us.
That's absolutely right. It's affirming to know that there's other freaks like us.
Yeah.
Makes us feel less alone in the world, guys. All right, so that's going to kind of wrap it up, Mike. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here today?
I am what I am, and that's all that I am.
That's right. And we are mercifully free of the ravages of intelligence. So for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.
Nipples for men.